In this interview, I spoke with Marc Blinder about the Open Rights Exchange. It's an open source, cross-chain identity and account protocol that enables users to control their own identity, data, assets, and rights on multiple blockchains, as well as on the existing Web 2.0 infrastructure. This means the applications built in the ORE protocol will be natively cross-chain and can connect to traditional finance. So I think this is a really interesting one to look at. Now, to be clear, I'm not endorsing Open Rights Exchange or anything that's using it, and I'm not recommending you invest in it. This should only be part of your own research, as it is a part of my own research. So always do your own research, do your own due diligence, make your own decisions. Don't buy stuff because influencers say so. But yeah, anyway, as always, feel free to use the timestamps to jump around as you do it. And if you enjoyed the interview, make sure to like, subscribe, do all that stuff down below. It really does help the channel grow, and I really appreciate it. Now let's get started. All right, welcome to DeFi Now, everybody. I've got Marc Blinder here from Open Rights Exchange. Thanks for coming on the channel, Marc.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So yeah, you guys have your IDO coming up, so I'm sure there's a lot of questions coming. So I've got some notes that I want to ask you about. So let's first just start off with, what is the Open Rights Exchange?
Yeah, well, the Open Rights Exchange is a blockchain that we often refer to as like a layer 1.5 solution. So ORE, or Open Rights Exchange as it's called, ORE, is built to just handle identities, and it's built for cross-chain identities. So one user, right, a Marc Blinder, can actually have public keys for multiple blockchains that are stored in an identity registry on ORE, which means for me as a user, it's sort of more convenient because I can get all my different blockchain identities tied together in one place. That's part of the long-term vision. And unlike many layer one blockchains, we don't actually allow dApps on our chain. The whole purpose is that we do this one narrow specific thing, and we do it really well, and that plugs into other blockchains. So right now, ORE ID and the ORE blockchain are connected to dApps on EOS, Wax, Ethereum, Algorand, Telos, and then soon we'll have Polygon, BSC, Cardano, Solana. So we're always trying to do everything really cross-chain. And that's kind of where we hang our hat, is that cross-chain identity.
So a big part of, sounds like what you're mentioning, is the ORE ID. That's one of the aspects of the Open Rights Exchange. The big question I have there, because I think ID is definitely one of the most important problems that we have that needs to be solved. And especially when we talk about, onboarding users from different countries and kind of uniting that. But then there's also the question of, that's a very valuable amount of data for people. So I guess, how do users control their own data, and how does privacy fit into this?
Yeah, that's such an awesome question. And thank you for asking about that, because not everyone does, right? And it is the right question to ask. So that is actually a core part of why we have the ORE blockchain at the heart of everything we do. So I'm a contributor to ORE, but I'm the CEO of Aikon. Aikon is a business. We're a SaaS company. We built ORE ID. We sell it to a bunch of different businesses. And you could imagine a single sign-on for multiple blockchains that is a private company that's not decentralized, that's totally centralized. That's kind of what an exchange does, right? It's kind of like what Coinbase does for you. But we wanted to do something that was more true to the blockchain spirit, where users would own their own identities. And so when we built ORE ID, we used the ORE blockchain so that at its heart, the user owns the key pairs. We don't know their private keys. And so the user could export themselves from ORE ID and not work with Aikon down the road. If they maybe start with Aikon, they don't have to end with Aikon. But anyway, the entire time, they would still be on the ORE blockchain. And so we're trying to bring that decentralization and that true blockchain spirit to this sort of world of kind of services, technically services that are connecting off-chain to on-chain identity.
Okay. I'm trying to think of I've got several questions that I'm trying to think of the best way to go to it. I guess the first one is, can you kind of elaborate on the relationship between Aikon and ORE, and how that dynamic plays out?
Yeah, totally. So the model is kind of similar to what you see with consensus and the Ethereum Foundation, right? So ORE is kind of, I mean, it's not really owned by anyone. It's run by a bunch of nodes that are spread all over the world. But the ORE blockchain is sort of run by the Open Rights Foundation, right? And so the Open Rights Foundation is nonprofit. Everything Open Rights Foundation does is open source and kind of given away. And then the blockchain is run based on the utility token of ORE, very similar to what you might get with Ethereum, right? So the ORE Foundation, all they do is give away tokens. They don't make any money and they never will. And then Aikon is a business, and we are actually like a contractor for the ORE Foundation that does software. We also do some marketing. And so similar to Consensus, where we get some tokens in order to do all of this work to build things like ORE ID, ORE Vault, other software. But the whole point of the IDO that's coming up next week is at that point, anyone can build anything using the ORE identity registry without coming to us, right? You could just, get those tokens yourself, build whatever you want on the blockchain. Obviously, as someone who works at Aikon, I want our services to be really appealing and cost effective. And if they're not, like, yell at me on Twitter and we'll fix it and make it better. But that's kind of the relationship between those two pieces. And again, that's sort of why, we didn't want to be this truly centralized, like it's just going to be Aikon building this ID service. And so again, like if our company got all hit with an asteroid on the same day or something, or all like the identities would still go on for the users. The key pairs are on the blockchain, and that's spread all over the world. So,
okay, so you kind of have this separation between the two, and then you have the ORE Foundation will essentially be a governing body, and then people will pitch ideas to them and then they will vote on which ideas to fund. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's definitely coming. So it's not up and running right now in terms of the public pitching, but that's exactly where we're headed. And it's exactly what we want to do, is to make this blockchain as open and accessible to the world as possible.
How does I guess, in the future, how will the governance structure of the foundation be managed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now it's got its own board of directors, and the goal is to have the token holders actually have a voice and get to vote on future appointments to the board and things like that. And so over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, we want to roll out all that sort of decentralized governance aspects of it. But for now, it's just got a kind of a foundation with a board of directors. And that's kind of who's running it right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying in the future, you would have the token holders would vote on who would be appointed to this board, as opposed to something like another idea I had was you have people do these proposals and then people would vote on the proposals. The token holders would vote on the proposals directly. So would you have just them voting on who gets appointed to this board or counselor, whatever you want to call it, or have them vote on, this is something, this proposal, this, other company that wants to build something, they could vote directly?
Yeah, I think there's a mix. So to me, I think you want a combination of a board that can do things like decide on basic developer grants that take a lot of expertise, right? You're like, we need a bunch of engineers and people who really know what they're doing to look at these proposals for, an open source plugin, right? At the same time, I think changes to the blockchain, like let's say you were going to change the transaction fees or move from a staking model to a fee model or things like that. I think that's the place where the board or the public should propose it. And then the token holders should have a chance to vote on it, kind of an up or down, yay or nay. So you get these proposals that go out there that are meaningful for everyone, and then that's where you would get that sort of direct democracy where everyone's voting on it as token holders. But for the more run-of-the-mill developer grants, I would think you'd want a kind of more streamlined process.
I completely agree. And I think governance is something that nobody's quite gotten it right yet. And there's still going to be a lot of different testing and things like that. But there's definitely a trade-off when you have everybody can vote, every token holder can vote on anything, but then you have people that don't know what they're doing and they just, vote on what sounds the best without knowing if the people that are proposing it can actually do it and things like that. So I think having a hybrid system that you were describing, I think that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things I also think is the token holders should have the ability to approve or reject new appointments to the board. So be able to say, oh, well, the board has chosen this person to serve the next 1-year term or 2-year terms. And then the token holders maybe would be able to say, oh, yeah, well, I'm okay with that, or I'm not okay with this person for whatever reason.
Okay, yeah. I want to change gears a little bit and kind of go a little bit more broad and talk about what is the ultimate goal of why you started this, and kind of what is the main thing that we want to achieve with the Open Rights Exchange and Foundation.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me back. Like, I'm a total politics nerd, and so I'm sure there's like a lot of people like falling asleep in front of YouTube right there. So yeah, what we're trying to do with the Open Rights Exchange has always been spreading mass adoption of the blockchain. And so everything we've done is around how to make it easier for kind of the mass market. And so that's everything from, okay, like ORE ID is like, how do we let people just log in with Google? Or how do we let people embed, right? Like one of our customers is doing an NFT game. It's like a native game on the mobile phone. And so they need to be able to like have the wallet inside that app. You don't want people leaving a game constantly to go sign transactions, right? So ORE ID enables that inside the native app. And so those are the types of things we really care about, is driving mass adoption. It's driving ease of use for average people all over the world. Because like, I am a true believer in the stuff that's happening in DeFi, NFTs, blockchain, the transparency, the empowerment of the average person, as well as like the returning value to the users of the system. Like, totally aligns with my beliefs, my ethics, everything I want to do. But for a lot of people, it's just really hard. I tried explaining liquidity mining to my family so they could get involved. And it's like, I sent this email. It's like, here's 17 easy steps with screenshots and arrows, and they still couldn't do it, right? And so we want it to be easy so that people like my own family can benefit from this amazing new technology and new economic systems.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because trying to convince my family about crypto and explain it to them is why I started this channel. That's why like all my earliest
That's
videos
so
are
awesome.
like, why do we need Bitcoin? Is this? I was like, okay, I've explained this so many times, I'm just gonna make a video. So that's great. Yeah. So I think the thing that's gonna be the most interesting for a lot of the viewers is going to be ORE ID. And I've heard it kind of described as the sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook or sign in with Apple, but not only connecting all these different blockchains that you mentioned earlier, but also you can use the same ID outside of blockchain in Web 2.0. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, most of our use cases are businesses that are connecting a Web 2.0 app into Web 3.0. It's totally could be usable to go back the other way, but just in the simple math, right? There's like, what is it? 5-6 billion people on the internet on Web 2.0, and like 100 million maybe on the blockchain, right? So it's like all the action is going this direction right now, which is great. Like that's what we're here for, to help make that a smooth transition. And so, yeah, when you have a public identity registry like that, it could be used, and we hope down the road, if you're looking like 10 years down the road, you could do it to prove who you are for your Netflix subscription, or prove who you are to have encrypted communications, but between you and me. But right now, all of the use cases really are moving those Web 2.0 users into a Web 3.0 use case.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. I guess the reason I bring it up is because, the simpler we can make it to where people can use the same login in both places, I think whoever can do that the most effectively and first and gain that adoption will most likely be the one that actually gets that adoption, potentially for decades or longer, because whoever especially if we're talking about a decentralized protocol, which everyone can do it, there's not really any reason for them to be replaced. So that's kind
exactly.
of,
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
like that's exactly part, like that's, wow. It's exactly why we're doing this, because there's this real fundamental kind of game theory problem with the existing identity players on the internet, right? No one thinks it's a good idea to trust 2 or 3 companies with everyone's identity. But at the same time, everyone wants one identity they can use everywhere on the internet, right? It's like absolutely what a normal person wants. And so one of the ways that the Web 2.0 world is trying to solve that is with WebAuthn, which is the biometrics, right? You can use your finger or your face on your phone, on your laptop. And that's one way to kind of smooth that transition where no one party owns it, but at the same time, you can use it in lots of different places. But I think there's still this fundamental business model conflict with like Google. They're always going to try and own it all if they can. And so what we're doing with ORE, the ORE blockchain actually natively supports WebAuthn, i.e. the biometric login. Unfortunately, we don't have any live customers using it yet, but if any developers are watching this show, like we're totally with you on that. Like we've got one really cool company called Humanoid that's already starting to do that biometric integration. So like love that kind of thing, because it is probably the best way to have that decentralized identity that's consistent and easy. So like amazing stuff. Love that team. But yeah, anyway, this is kind of a roundabout answer, but so we built that into the blockchain so that you can start with Google, start with Facebook, but eventually get rid of them. So you could log in with Apple today, and maybe later you're just someday going to use your face, or you're just going to use your finger, or just going to use your email address, and you can kind of get rid of them if you want to. But that's going to be like a 20-year journey, I think, for the industry, where people go from, man, I love Apple, it's so convenient, to, wait, I can do this totally decentralized and it's just as easy.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is most people don't care about decentralization, and most people don't care about privacy if it is inconvenient for them. So, doing it to where it's either just as convenient or even more convenient will be, I think, really the only way to get the majority of people to adopt it. So yeah, I completely agree there. Now you've mentioned a couple of companies are already using the ORE ID. So can you talk about which companies are already using it and kind of what they're doing with it?
Yeah. So like, I mean, my favorite case study is always Republic. Republic is America's most prolific crowdfunding platform. Republic.co, like huge operation. So for many years, they've been doing very cutting edge crowdfunding for stock, right? For companies, startups, and other companies. What we're doing with them is we're working on their note token. So the note is their first tokenized equity. So that is actually tokenized equity in Republic itself. But part of their attitude, like, do it for ourselves first before we make everyone else do it, right? Eat our own champagne or dog food, depending on how you like to say it. And so that's my favorite use case, absolutely. So there, it's like you've got over 1 million Republic users that already exist. They already log in a certain way. They're used to a certain experience. And now we've got this note token that's being deployed on Algorand, right? They probably haven't heard of Algorand. They probably haven't heard of wallets. They don't know what a seed phrase is, right? They've been doing this a certain way for a long time. And so we're working with them on that project to help build the wallet into the Republic UI. So you just log into Republic the exact same way you always did. But now instead of just being able to buy the normal equities, you can also buy the tokenized equity.
And you would need the ORE ID to buy the tokenized equity.
Exactly. And so the ORE ID is what connects the existing login they have to the blockchain. And then the user gets their own ORE ID and they have their own private key. It doesn't get shown to them in private key form, but it's stored encrypted in the cloud in a like totally confidential way, where they only, if they can present their account, right? Whether it's Google, Twitter, whatever they prefer to use, right? Their Twitter account and their second factor password, then they can use the wallet. And so we're trying to be a little Goldilocks there, where it's non-custodial, it's truly that user's property and their assets, but at the same time, it's easy and uses the same UI they're used to.
So within your ORE ID, you have your private key and your seed phrase that is kind of just on the back end, so users don't need it. But in order to, I guess, sign transactions, in order to access it, they would use their existing login that they have been used to, whether it's like their email, and you mentioned two-factor authentication. And then if they want, and so I guess that's my question is, you mentioned earlier that people are going to be using Google login and Apple login, but through this process of being able to later on down the road pull out their private key and remove it from those logins, then in that way they would be able to leave the centralized infrastructure and have full control over it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's right. Right. So it's right. The note token is a token. It's on Algorand. And so you can, if you're savvy with these things, right, you could export an encrypted copy of your private key, and decrypt it with the password that you chose, right? And then you could just copy paste it into a wallet, right? As long as you don't reveal it to anyone during that journey. And so that's part of our kind of belief system. We don't expect many people to do that. Historically, it's not really done that often, but we believe people should have the right to do it if they want to.
Yeah, and I still think that that's more secure than how you would normally generate a hot wallet, because if you're just doing it through your email and password, then your private key is never shown, like never displayed on screen, because most people's devices probably have malware. And so as soon as that seed phrase or private key is shown on screen, it's immediately no longer secure. And so I think by doing it with the password and email, that you never show that on screen, and as long as they can keep their email secure, then that's a more secure wallet than a typical hot wallet would be.
Yeah, and then the other thing we do, if this isn't too in the weeds here, is we use, for the part where the key is decrypted, we have a service that we call the trustless signing service. So it's an open source. Anyone can go look at it on GitHub, so you know it's not sniffing your keys. And it's like a Docker container. And then we run the Docker container in Google Confidential Compute, which is part of the Google Cloud. And so that means that, like, even if you put a gun to my head, like, I can't get those private keys, right? Because it's machine level encryption. So like Google employees can't get it. I can't get it. No one can get that. But the user can, if they have the password and the OAuth token, can make the trustless signing service sign a blockchain transaction for them.
And which kind of two-factor authentication do you require users use for this?
Strong password.
Okay.
We will be adding more other options there, but we're not big believers in SMS as two-factor, that I'm sure most people aren't. We have on our staging server done like Ledger, YubiKey, stuff like that. So if developers are watching and they're downloading the sample app, you can do that. But none of our current businesses are deploying with that enabled. And so each business is using the ORE blockchain a little bit of a different way, right? We talked about Republic, talked about, like, we have these two NFT gaming companies, Red Fox Labs and Liquid, that are doing these native apps that are NFT games. And so those can use the hardware key store on the device as well with ORE ID. So everyone does it a little differently with the security model that kind of makes the most sense for their use case.
And I remember reading also app developers, when a user, whether it's one of these NFT games, when a user creates their account, app developers can drop some tokens into their account, so they don't have to first go and set up an exchange account, buy Ethereum, exchange it for something else, and do all of that. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's wallets on the blockchain. Is sort of like a smart contract, basically, with a wallet, the funding wallet. that each developer has. And then the developer can choose in their settings, right? So for example, Republic, if you invested $2,000 in their tokenized equity, they don't need you to go pay 20 cents to create an Algorand wallet and then pay zero point 0.2 cents to make that transaction to opt in to receive the note tokens, right? Like they are going to cover that for you. And we think that's also really helpful because it adds a lot of friction for that first time user to make them, like you said, like go get yourself $10 worth of Ethereum so you can make a transaction on OpenSea. It's like, that's really hard.
It's also probably going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, today, right? It used to be $10 is like, now it's 70 or whatever. But yeah, and so again, for the NFT games, right, like Liquid Universe, they're doing it on Wax. And so when you create your account with ORE ID, they're just funding the tokens to create your account and stake the resources you need to play the game. So you can just get in there and get playing and have fun right away. And then, sure, maybe down the road, you're going to need more tokens, but now you at least know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it. So you get excited about going to get more tokens instead of just confronted with it right away.
Yeah, I think that's a much better user experience for new time users. And when people are just kind of confronted with that, you not knowing how to get it, and then they have to go online and try and research it themselves, and then they get scammed, and it's just this huge ordeal for people. So I think, yeah, the easier we can make that process, the better off we'll be when it comes to getting mass adoption.
Yeah, and we have some other businesses, right? Like this one, Authentium. It's super cool. Again, I love it because it's really good for the planet, good for the environment, but they're doing sort of farm to table supply chain management in Australia and doing it in a way where the farmers can directly contract with independent truckers to get it from the farm to the restaurant or whoever's buying it. And it's tracked all the way as like an NFT on the blockchain, which is great use of a blockchain, right? But again, for the truckers, the farmers, they're just going to be scanning a QR code and they don't want to, I'm guessing, I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming most of them don't really want to be investing in cryptocurrency or betting on whether this token is going to go up or down or whatever. Most of the participants in the system are just going to be zapping QR codes and getting paid for the work they're doing, but without any middlemen to take a cut of that along the way.
How do they use ORE ID?
So yeah, exactly. ORE ID. And again, this is not live yet, but I just love what the team is doing at Authentium, and we're so excited to be working with them. But with ORE ID, it's built into the app. So when you are the farmer, the trucker, whoever you are, that's going to be using this QR code reader on your phone, you log in with ORE ID. So now you have a wallet on the blockchain. Now, when you scan the QR code, I have possession of this basket of garlic, right? And so that's tracked on the blockchain because my mobile app connected me to a wallet, and then the NFT for this QR code wearing garlic goes into this wallet, and then it goes to that wallet when it comes out to the warehouse or whatever.
Okay. Let's talk before we wrap up. Let's talk about the token. Do you want to let us know what is the purpose of the ORE token and how it's used in the protocol?
Yeah, so really straightforward utility token. It's used every time you're creating an account on the ORE blockchain. You need ORE tokens, right? And the more accounts a company is creating, the more tokens they need to take that storage space on the chain, essentially. And so it's like very straightforward utility where, again, it doesn't, because it's this sort of narrow use case. It's like if you're storing accounts or you're storing NFTs on the chain, you need tokens to do it. And if you're storing 10 times as many accounts, you need 10 times as many tokens. And it's all described in the white paper, of course. And for folks that are interested in the token, especially, the more utility users of the system there are, the more valuable the chain is, right? That's the whole value, is that it's one standard that's being widely used. So we want developers using it. We want people getting their hands on it. We want it decentralize it in the hands of the public. So we're working with 3 launch pads, Scale Swap because they're connected to Polygon, Pools because they're really strong in BSC, and Occam.fi because they're really connected to Cardano. We want to have this like really expansive cross-chain vision. And so we wanted to connect with those different communities. And that's on the way to a listings on Uniswap and QuickSwap next week.
So it's going to be both on Polygon and Ethereum to begin with. And then how will be able to like bridge it between the two ones just using the existing bridges?
Yeah. And bridge from the ORE chain, which is the layer 1.5 chain, to Ethereum. And then the bridge from Ethereum to Polygon. And then obviously we want to bridge BSC, we want to bridge Cardano, all these places over the long run. But we're just trying to do everything in a really measured way to keep the community safe. We don't want to, anyone losing tokens or getting trapped or anything like that. So we do a lot of testing and trying to just be really careful as we develop. Which right. I should actually say one more thing about being careful as we develop. This whole project started 4 years ago, and we're just now selling the tokens to the public in the IDO. And that was done quite deliberately because me and the other founders, we've been around the tech industry a long time. Like 15 years I've been in the tech industry, and things in software don't turn out the way you expected when you start, right? You learn things along the way. Customers demand things, other people innovate, blockchains change their code, all that stuff. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't just doing something on an idea or a PowerPoint deck or a white paper. We wanted to make sure we were getting in there with something that was really well battle tested a little bit by real customers, real businesses before we put it in the hands of the public. And so, the blockchain's been live for 2 years. The coding has been happening for 4. And just now we're finally feel like, we really believe in this and we think it's safe for the long run.
Such a novel concept to build before you raise all the money.
I know it's novel, but we thought it was the safest thing for the long run. And we really do want something. I would say Trey, the CTO of Aikon and kind of chief architect for the ORE blockchain, he always says he wants to build something that'll be used 50 years from now. Like that's the whole goal. And so it's hard to do that if you raise first and then build later.
Yeah, and also I think by doing it that way, it allows the team to stay more focused because managing the community is such a massive undertaking while you're trying to build something, especially if you're talking about you've been building since 2017. That would have been a long time for people to wait before this, they can actually start using it a lot.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, we're learning that right now. I've been doing AMAs every day and, I love it. It's like great to have that transparency and be able to tell our story to the public. But yeah, it is a lot of effort.
All right. So how do you recommend what steps people take if they want to get involved or participate in one of the IDOs?
Yeah. So those 3 launch pads, as I said, Pools, Occamfi, Scale Swap, they all have the exact same terms, exact same deal. Follow us. If you go to ORE.network, that's our website, ORE.network. And there's, Telegram links, Twitter links, our Medium blog, whatever is your comfort zone for learning about blockchains. We want to be there. And there's a whole developer page with tutorials for how to build, block explorers, GitHub repos, all that stuff too. And of course, if you are building and you want help, don't hesitate to reach out. Like we're here to help make sure people are really getting real solid quality code out of this thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that I guess one of my biggest interests in the industry are infrastructure projects that are solving key issues like this. I think that and probably gaming and DeFi are my main focuses. But infrastructure projects, I think, are some of the best long-term projects to watch out for and to consider because, the ones that succeed are going to just become massively successful because when you have one issue that one project can solve very well, they can solve it across the board. And then there's, like I said earlier, there's not really a reason for them to be replaced. So I think I really like the way that you guys have been building it. I like that you guys, I didn't know the blockchain had been live for 2 years. So that's really awesome to hear. I like the philosophy behind it. And yeah, I hope you guys, I wish you guys the best success.
Thanks. Oh, no, thanks for all the kind words. And it's so exciting to be on your show and like really cool to be here. So thanks for the time.